From the adventures of me and BB destroying bombers, to my adventures with Doris Dogwood outsmarting Pee Wee Sutton, to toilet talk with, well, the one and only me. There is only one, repeat, just one, Toilet Terry. That's right, 3 to go, starting with this one. So let's get started. I think you guys are really going to like the most, out of everything we have experienced this season, what we have in store for you for the next 3 episodes. We've decided to go very different now than before, but y'all are gonna love it. Now it is time to introduce a new member of our show who has been on my channel for quite a while now, but has not made an appearance yet in this show during this season. Let's hear it for J. Michael.
My wife and I have always preferred exploring the mountains over the seashore, although we've made trips to both, and we really like both. But we're fortunate to live in a part of the state of Georgia where we have the foothills of North Carolina, Georgia, and Tennessee, all within a few hours' drive of our home. So back in about the 1980s, we purchased a small piece of land right outside of Blue Ridge, Georgia. We built a cabin there so that we could indulge our love of the mountains whenever we wanted to. At about this same time, again back in the 1980s, we discovered another way to feed our passion for the mountains, and that is visiting bed and breakfast, which were the hot thing back in that day. B&B lodgings began to spring up all over the place in the South, and we began seeking them out. And we always enjoyed the places we stayed. We stayed at some of the smallest homes that had unbelievable histories. We've eaten some of the best food, slept in some of the oldest structures, many of them unrestored, and experienced spectacular mountain views and met some of the most intriguing people that you will ever meet. But none can rival the couple that we met at a lodge high in the mountains of North Carolina. The lodge is named the Swag, and it's near the town of Waynesville, North Carolina. It's situated between the dip where 2 mountains come together. That's what a swag is. And it offers views that are just spectacular. The mornings are always cool and crisp, even in the summertime. The site is very isolated and removed from civilization, and since 3 gourmet meals are served there every day, most guests don't even bother driving back down the mountain to the nearby town. There are miles of hiking trails, unusual wildflowers to discover, a fishing pond, a well-stocked library. All these accommodations are nestled inside ancient log structures, and each one has its own story to tell. There's plenty to do at the Swag. This story begins back in the 1970s when New Yorkers, Reverend Dan Matthews and his wife, Denier, brought their children to this remote area of North Carolina on a camping trip, and they just fell in love with the area, and they came back many times. The land where they liked to pitch their tent was at the edge of a small meadow, which was situated between 2 mountains, and the locals told them that this area was called the Swag, and to their amazement, it was for sale. The obvious problem was the sheer isolation of the spot. It was over 2 miles from the base of the mountain up to the top, and there was no road that led up there. So they wanted to build a vacation home here, but how would they do it this high up in the mountains? And since Dan was the rector of the Trinity Church on Wall Street in New York, I'm sure prayer played a part in their plan. After the family returned to New York, Denier, Dan's wife, made arrangements to return back to North Carolina to begin the research and planning for their new mountain home. Local contractors quickly began carving a road into the mountainside. The task took several months. The road was long, rocky, very narrow, and over 2 miles long. Even today, every driver must stop at the bottom of the mountain, roll down your car window, and sound your car horn very loudly for a minute or so, and then wait and listen. If no car horn answered you back, it was safe to go to the top. Did I say it was isolated? Boy, it is. But the trip is worth this effort. So the exploits of Denier and Dan were beyond what most of us might attempt, but they persevered. And the result is the creation of a rambling collection of ancient log buildings that the Matthews were anxious to share with family and with friends. Over time, the reputation of the swag spread, and Dan and Denier decided to open their retreat to paying guests, and the Swag Resort Lodge was born. You may have surmised that the two intriguing people that I mentioned at the beginning are Dan and Denier Matthews, but you'd be wrong. As delightful and interesting as they are, the two fascinating and charming people that Sue and I met at the Swag are George and Margaret Carey. Who are they? Listen up. Our first trip there was memorable and lots of fun, and we were anxious to go back. So reservations were made for a fall visit. You instantly feel a sense of peace when you get out of your car. The first thing you notice as you exit your car is the drop in temperature, and the absolute quiet is at first very unnerving. Check-in is always pleasant and includes a greeting from Denier. We told her this was our second stay, and she announced how much she appreciated us coming back. But I think you're going to enjoy this stay even more, she said. She said there's going to be an activity tonight before dinner. We hope you'll come. She had invited a representative from the Park Service to come and speak about the local ecology in the mountains. Once before, we heard a local preacher, a comedian, speak, and I've never laughed so hard in my life. So we expected this to be a very informative and good encounter with the other guests, so we said we'd be there. Wanting to get a good seat, we arrived at the meeting room about 20 minutes early and settled into 2 comfortable chairs. A few minutes passed, and I noticed an older couple entering the meeting room through the large double doors. They made a beeline straight for us. He thrust out his hand and said, "How are you? I'm George. This is my wife, Margaret." It was hard to miss his distinct British accent. Standing and grasping his hand, I smiled and introduced us and said, "Where are you folks from?" "Well, we're from London," he said, "and we're here on holiday." We learned that this couple was staying in the very large private cabin that was set aside for larger groups. It's placed away from the main compound, and they had 2 friends with them. I thought it was strange that they allowed only 4 people to occupy the big cabin. George and Margaret were sitting at the head of the table, a spot that's normally reserved for the owners. So Dan rose and announced, as he had done several hundred times before, "It's my custom to say grace before every meal, but this evening I want to break with tradition and ask my good friend George Carey to lead us in our prayer." My friends, it's my distinct honor and a real privilege to introduce you to the Archbishop of Canterbury and his wife, Margaret. George stood. There was an audible gasp from the crowd. No one said a word. George stood, he smiled, and recited a beautiful and touching prayer. Then Dan thanked the Archbishop and made a heartfelt request to each of us. It's very difficult for George and Margaret to travel in Europe without being recognized, so I told them, if you could ever find a way to come to America, we have the perfect place for you to visit where you can relax, unwind, enjoy the beauty of nature, and all without fear of the media and large crowds bothering you. All we ask is that you respect their privacy. Don't discuss their presence outside this setting, but enjoy your time with George and Margaret. And by the way, that's what they want to be called, George and Margaret. Let's eat. George knew that he would be center stage, and he gracefully answered questions and spoke to every person in the room, asking their names and asking them where they were from. Questions ranged from how often do you meet with the Queen, What is Prince Charles really like? Where do you live? And what's a typical day like for an archbishop? We learned that the woman traveling with the archbishop was his personal secretary, and the man that was with them was very likely in charge of security. During the week, we saw George and Margaret often on the hiking trails or at breakfast, reading in the library or sitting by the small pond or on the large front porch. They always spoke, always remembered our names. Sue and I had several brief conversations with them, and we found them to be very likable people, not pompous or arrogant in any way. We learned that the Archbishop is the head of the Church of England. Among them, the Trinity Church on Wall Street, where Dan is the rector. In essence, he is Dan's boss. We also learned that the Archbishop is the highest-ranking non-royal in all of Britain. George explained that during a trip to London recently for church business, Dan issued an invitation to come to the swag, never thinking that the Archbishop would actually come, but he did. As I think back on this encounter, I believe the event that will forever remain in my mind occurred for us at checkout. We had concluded our stay of several days, and we were at the front desk settling our account and chatting with Denier when the Archbishop walked up. "Leaving so soon?" he said. "Well, I hate to see you go. We've certainly enjoyed our visits with the two of you, so just let me say that if you're ever in London, please come by our place where we live at Lambeth Place." That's where they live. It's a castle. "Tell the secretary there that you're an old friend of the Archbishop, and I'll give you a personal tour. It's quite a place." Well, that settles it. Our next trip needs to be to London to visit with our new friends, George and Margaret.
Well, I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode so far. It's been very different from any other episode this season. Well, greetings! I'm Teddy, here with my mother, Teresa. Welcome to Analogies. This episode's topic, superheroes. Peter Parker is to a spider, while Scott Lang is a
ant.
King T'Challa is a Black Panther, while Steve Rogers is a
super soldier.
Thor is to thunder, while his brother Loki is to
mischief.
Pac-Man is to eating ghosts, as Luke Skywalker is to
saving the galaxy.
Bruce Wayne is to bats, as COVID-19 is to
China.
Well, that's all for today, folks.
Hey man, why are you sleeping? Hey, don't you have work to do? Here, try some of this. Try new Coca-Cola Energy. This energy drink blew me away.
It helped me. It may contain caffeine.
Try Coca-Cola Energy today.
It will surely blow you away. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to sub for more content. And I will see you guys on episode 9. Good night, everybody.